Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, before we get into actual intro, just gonna point out this boy right here is Bandit. He's probably the most skittish of the cats I have. He's a cute one, but he's he's the most likely to jump away in panicked fear. So, just figured I'd hold him up for the camera, make him smile real quick, and gonna let him go right now. He poked his head into the room like a dozen times, and then I figured, you know what? He needs to say hi. All right. It's Wednesday, November 12th, 2025. This is a RambleCast. I'm your host, Cody Toombs. There is no Corbin today. He is, as I understand it, taking part in the Fugu Challenge. Whatever you're thinking, you're close. Not right, you're close. It's where they have a first-year culinary student attempt to make fugu using just dinner knives. It's daring. It's kind of stupid, honestly, but he's going to try it. He's going to eat the fugu and it's the full F around and find out situation. That's how this is going, folks. Corbin may not be with us next week. He'll be missed. But he is on the schedule, so you know what? That might actually be telling of what's to come. We'll find out. Oh, wow. I just accidentally clicked on a Twitch channel that has HDR settings active, and I don't think the person realizes that they are streaming something that is basically unwatchable to people. That's fun. All right. Yeah, it doesn't matter, but I've got a Twitch stream going in the background so I can collect drops. Let's see. Austin. Oh, yeah. So I can actually kind of answer that. It turns out that YouTube about 2 weeks ago, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, decided to revert everyone's nicknames so they don't, or not revert, I guess, but they just stop showing the nickname you chose or the channel name you chose, and now it just shows you the actual I guess username or tag that they have. Why this is a thing, I don't know. It's a terrible idea. But yeah, so that's happening. That's why, for whatever reason, everyone is showing up with the @ symbol and their actual usernames. Because, hey, there's no better way to dox people than showing that. Yeah, this is the world we live in. They can't seem to get the basics right. Anyway, speaking of getting the basics right, it's news time. So, let's talk about the news. There were things that happened this week. Oh boy, were there things that happened this week. In a surprising announcement, Google shared plans to invest 6.4 billion USD or 5.5 billion euros in cloud infrastructure based in Germany. The new data center will be based just outside of Frankfurt, with construction likely to begin in 2026. Shortly after the announcement, reporters at the White House could hear Donald Trump asking his staff how much his cut would be. Those that know, you know. OpenAI also had an announcement this week. They made an upgrade to their latest flagship model, now GPT 5.1. The new version is claimed to be smarter and more enjoyable to talk to, and like the prior version, it will hand off queries to various models based on which is best suited to answer them. This follows a tumultuous run with GPT-5 that found users asking for a return of GPT-4o, a mere few hours after the release of 5. Yeah, it didn't go well. Sam Altman gave a brief interview with reporters stating the upgrade was designed to have a warmer tone and more personality. Quote, anything to make Scarlett love me. Bridging the two previous stories, a German court ruled against OpenAI in a case brought by Germany's music rights society, GEMA, that is GEMA, which accused the chatbot maker of copyright violations for, quote, learning from the lyrics of musicians in the country without acquiring permission. OpenAI unsuccessfully argued that its own users should be to blame. That's not a joke. No, really. OpenAI actually made the argument its own users are to blame. In a statement following the ruling, OpenAI expressed interest in filing an appeal and said, we respect the rights of creators and content owners. But you know what we always say, good artists borrow, great artists steal. Yes, it's definitely a quote attributed to us. Nobody else said that before us. We're sure of it. Oh, and that is the news. One of these days, I swear I will actually have more than 3 news topics. I'm confident of this. Oh, yeah. Hey, sometimes that's just what the time allows. All right. Anyway, so how's everyone doing? Oh, okay. So I admit this week kind of ran away with me. I've had other things going on, but there were a few things that happened. I admit that, but today we're focusing on one. Late Night with Cody Toombs. If someone will give me a show, I'm in. I'm in right now, baby. I'm in. But in the meantime, Ty's coming off. And yes, what you just saw happened. All right. So we're also just doing this because I hate having a shirt buttoned all the way up unless I'm getting paid for it. Okay. So what was the big news this week? Honestly, it's obvious. It's obvious, baby. It's the Steam Machine. Holy crap. This thing is kind of cool. So there was a lot of information here. I am going to freely admit, I don't think I got nearly all of it. But Valve announced, yes, they're launching what is effectively a successor to the original Steam Machine. This is going to be a basically a gaming PC in a tiny box that is meant to be sort of like a console, but not necessarily exactly like a console, except it's also going to work just like a console, where the idea is you have a launcher interface. It basically is going to be an interface to the Steam store, but for all intents and purposes, you'll be able to click individual interface buttons to download games, immediately play them. You'll have a launcher screen with your installed games, the whole 9 yards. Like, this is a console, except it's a PC. So, you know, strictly speaking, it's exactly the same thing Microsoft has been promising for at least, what, a couple of years? A few years? Whatever. But this one might work. I don't know. Now, I'll get to my skepticism in a moment, but first, what's cool? Valve basically highlighted all of the major things right away. This thing is, again, a gaming PC. Like, it actually has a gaming GPU, which, did they announce? I believe they announced the exact model of GPU, but I might be wrong on that. Oh, I think they didn't. Okay. Yeah, they're promising 4K gaming at 60 FPS. They are going to be using AMD CPUs, and I thought I saw which GPU. I might be mistaken. Maybe they didn't discuss the GPU. Regardless, it is a game class GPU. So, and yes, it has an LED strip that is going to show you the progress of updates, game installs, whatever. So yes, they achieved doing the same thing that Google once did with its own laptops and never again did, much to the chagrin of so many fans. Yeah, the LED strip on the original, what was it, Chromebook? Whatever. Anyway, yeah, that it's making the wildest of returns. So yeah, they've got a nice pretty page to highlight the various aspects of this, but not actually getting into a ton of details. Okay, so the GPU down here in the specs says semi-custom AMD RDNA 3. So, you know, not the latest and greatest, but still a pretty competent GPU. The CPU is going to be, so again, not the latest and greatest, but certainly good. Like, these are not specs to turn up your nose at. The RAM, there's evidently is going to be targeting 16 gig of system with another 8 gig of VRAM. So yeah, not the greatest, but not bad. Basically, like, this is hitting what I would consider to be kind of mid-range-ish for your gaming PCs. Like, it's not top of the line, but it's nowhere close to bad, which is great. Exactly. RDNA 3 is still a great place to be at. So these are going to be maybe not like your enthusiast level machines, but they're definitely good enough for the average player today to be using. Now, I want to emphasize today because right now these specs are good. Not great, but good. Like, certainly very competent, good gamer machine specs. I do question how they're going to hold up over a longer time period, because when we're talking about a comparison against game consoles, don't get me wrong, if you're holding consoles up against the PC market, obviously they do fall behind pretty quickly if they even launch in a competitive state. The difference is, due to the nature of the industry, most games continue to be built for a game console many years after they are released. So, for the most part, games, okay, granted, they don't end up looking much better, but they also keep working really, really well, even into the late years of a console. Whereas the PC game market, it's a little bit less predictable. Depending on how well this machine sells, game studios may or may not really target it, and that could be good or bad for it. We'll obviously just have to wait and see how that turns out. Let's see. So, wait, did I read this correctly? This has DisplayPort and HDMI out. Interesting. I wonder if it's gonna be dual monitor or if it's really one or the other. That leaves me asking, or leaves me really curious. Anyway, also, look, I'm gonna bully them for 1 second. Gigabit Ethernet, bro, give us 2.5. Come on, like, the additional cost is gonna, it would cost, like, in component cost, we're talking like maybe $5. Probably not even that. Just do it. Put in 2.5 gig. Like, Valve, you can do better. Anyway, not the most important. So I don't know. I like I think this is interesting. This is exciting. Part of their big positioning. Hey, Carson, how's it going? By the way, I didn't say hi to everyone else earlier, so hello to Alyssa, Austin, and David. Y'all are awesome for being here. So let's see. By the way, Carson, if the shirt's not giving it away, I totally did. I totally did a news segment earlier. Did I discuss the HDMI 2.0 versus 2.1 thing? I didn't discuss it, and I didn't get into it, but let's see. Off the top of my head, I actually don't remember the differences between the two. So, you know what? We're gonna live look this up. So let's just actually pull up Wikipedia's HDMI section, because it has been that long since I've looked at the differences. HDMI 2.0, which, in case it's not obvious, and it is on the screen right here, they're using a modern version of DisplayPort, but they're going with an old version of HDMI. Old, of course, being somewhat relative. Let's see. Pretty sure Xbox and PlayStation rock the gig port. Oh, they absolutely do. Here's the thing. I'm saying that if you're going to put in an Ethernet port, do better. Do better than the consoles. You can. It's possible. Because look, the consoles do fine, and for what they're doing, that's all well and good. I'm gonna argue that they can do better here. There's no reason they can't, and that's the issue. There is just simply no reason that they can't do better on a machine like this. So let's see. HDMI 2.1. It was announced in 2017, released later that year. Adds support for higher resolutions and higher refresh rates, including 4K 120 and 8K 60. Okay, let's see. So, 2.0 supported 4K 60. Okay, so literally just they doubled the potential frame rate, which is a pretty big deal. I mean, just objectively speaking, that's actually a really significant increase in data rates. Nevertheless, I mean, well, wait a second. Could this do? They don't show it here. I'm curious then if this should be able to do 1080 at 120. There shouldn't be any reason they can't do that. Right? Because they're highlighting 4K at 60, which is that is the HDMI, or yeah, that's HDMI 2.0 capabilities right there, or the max capabilities. But I would think 1080 at 120 should be supported too. Let's see. Wait, am I off on DisplayPort too? Come on. Sure, we'll just, for whatever reason, have to go that way. Okay, looking up DisplayPort really quick. Versions. Oh wow, am I spacing it? I thought. Okay, I'm way off on the DisplayPort. So their max DisplayPort is 1.4. Okay, you know what? I'm actually going to come down hard on this one. Harder than... Okay, so you're coming down hard on HDMI being behind. I'm going to come down harder on the fact they're behind on DisplayPort. So DisplayPort 2.1 was announced in 2022. Which, okay, that's pretty recent. Or relatively recent in terms of standards. But it is so much better. And anyone that knows enough about DisplayPort, you know it is way better. And strictly speaking, you could even go back to DisplayPort 2.0. And that was in 2019. Which, let's see. So 2.0 supported 8K resolutions. Let's see, do they list? I would have sworn there should be. I'm looking. Okay, it doesn't give a frame rate with that. But okay, so oh wow, there is way too much detail in here. Okay, so DisplayPort 2.0 configuration examples. Single display resolutions. You can do 16K at 60. 16K at 60 hertz on DisplayPort 2. They went for DisplayPort 1.4. Just saying. Yeah, I think they missed the boat a little bit on their output protocols. Will it matter is the question, though. Carson, I am sharing the right page. I'm just scrolling so fast in Wikipedia and bouncing around that I'm just not bothering to share that. It would just be a big mess on the screen as I'm fast scrolling. So yeah, as I'm looking at this, let's see. HDMI 2.0 let's see, has a maximum bandwidth of 18 gigabit per second. DisplayPort 1.4 is nearly double that at 32.4 gigabit per second. It's pretty significant. I mean, really, that is really massive. And then if you go up to DisplayPort 2.0, then you're hitting up to, if I've got this right, if I'm reading this correctly, you get up to 77 gigabit per second. Now, of course, here's the catch, and I think this is exactly why they went with these protocols. Wait, hold on. Oh, and by the way, let's see. Oh, does it say correctly? Hold on. Why? The Wikipedia article for HDMI is such a mess. Okay. I'm probably trying to read too fast, but it looks like at HDMI 2.1, you're getting up to as high as 48 gigabit per second. But that's only in specific modes, I think. Okay. So, yeah, and believe me, I've been picking up a couple of adapters for my MacBook lately, and I'm mostly focusing on DisplayPort adapters because, for those that know, Mac OS is weirdly glitchy with HDMI. I don't know if that's still true. It was true as of at least a couple years ago. So for those that don't know, if you're on HDMI with a MacBook, try getting DisplayPort. Just get a USB-C to DisplayPort cable, plug that in. Watch as your life just gets better. Okay, anyway. Yeah. This hardware, the fact that they chose DisplayPort 1.4 and HDMI 2.0, I think this is actually very telling. This probably means that whatever they have inside, they probably don't have the PCI lanes to share with IO anymore. There is probably like a actual hard limit that they're running up against where they've already allocated those to other things, and they literally just don't have enough to hand out to the display ports, or well, to the display, well, yeah, display ports, display space ports, plural. Let's see, table in Discord. Okay, I'll just dump this in here. Here we go. Okay, so yeah, all right, good. I read that correctly. It was 48 gigabit per second for 2.1. Yeah, this looks kind of rough. But here's the catch. Again, I have a strong feeling that the issue is that whatever they chose for a processor, they're probably actually running up against internal bandwidth limits, because I bet they're trying to keep the costs down, so they're picking a processor that probably has really limited internal bandwidth. So, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm way off. HDMI 2.0 can do 1080p at 440. And see, that's kind of the thing, because I still think maybe this machine is trying to highlight that it can do 4K, but I think they might intend for the average user to still choose 1080 or 1440. I don't know. That's super hypothetical. It obviously isn't going to be the case in all situations. But it would make a lot of sense. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they said, yeah, so, come on. So they're also saying under the CPU and GPU section, 4K gaming at 60 FPS with FSR. So they're basically pushing for, they're basically looking for upscaling. That's the whole point of FSR, is it produces an image at a lower resolution, then uses some separate hardware to upscale that and make it look prettier. Or well, sharper. So I kind of think that they're kind of acknowledging that their hardware is not going to be doing just native, like full native rendering. And they're not going to be pushing pixels at the highest rates. So I'm pretty sure their goal here is to fake like this is a higher end system than it is. And bear with me as I say this, I don't think that's a problem. And I'm going to get to why right here. They didn't discuss price, but they said that this is going to be at least price competitive with comparable hardware, like comparable PC hardware. I think what that really entails is they're probably trying to beat the they're probably trying to keep this at or below, at least I'm hoping, at or below $1,000. If it's above 1,000, I'm just going to predict it right now. This is not going to sell. I mean, there will certainly be, they'll move again, much like the original Steam machine, they're going to move probably, I don't know, 1 million or so units, which is a lot. That's not a bad number, but it's also a devastatingly terrible number. It's not enough to make this a viable product in the market. They're going to have to sell this thing in, like, to make this actually relevant in the gaming industry. They're going to have to move. I'm going to just throw out a number here. If they don't move at least 5 million units, I don't think that this is relevant in the industry. And maybe that's too many, maybe that's too few. How many Steam Decks sold? Okay, I'm not too far off. Valve has sold. Okay, this is an AI response, so take it. Oh, interesting. Wait. Oh yeah, okay. This might actually be accurate. All right, so IDC in February of this year put the number at 3.7 million units, and this is the Steam Deck, the handheld. Let's see. And okay, so they were estimating 3.7 million units shipped by the end of 2024, with potentially over 4 million as of 2025. Okay, so good number. Not a great number, but a good number. Like, the Steam Deck is relevant. Let's see. And I see a Reddit thread here that is supposedly claiming... Okay, I see why. I was going to say, supposedly it's claiming 8 million units sold. I think everybody knows that's wrong. But, yeah. But it has an edit saying, nope, we were wrong, 4 million. Okay, so collective agreement seems to be that they moved to about 4 million Steam Decks. Look, I don't follow this closely enough, but my interpretation, my understanding is the Steam Deck has sold about enough units to be in one of those... It's in that in-between spot where it's certainly not irrelevant. It matters. People are paying attention to it. People want it. People are buying it. But there aren't that many. It's not enough to shape the industry. It's not enough to dictate how the industry is going to operate. It's only enough to really be convincing to studios that they should pay attention to it, but not necessarily respond to it. I'm going to argue that the Steam machine, in order for it to be effective and to matter, it has to do at least as many as the Steam Deck. Probably more. And I don't... Depending on the price, I don't know that I am confident that's going to happen. All right, so Curvy, you're saying you're predicting $499 and $699 as price points. Oh boy, I don't think I agree. Valve needs that 30% cut more than the hardware sales. Here's the thing. I don't think that they're going to do that, because so The Verge wrote an article about this, and they highlighted a great point. Back with the original Steam machine, Valve did subsidize it. They lowered the price, and their whole aim was to make it competitive with existing consoles. Gabe Newell came right out and said that subsidizing it was really painful. That was actually the term he used. It was painful. I kind of think that the situation might be repeating itself here. I think that they recognize that it is really expensive to do that, I don't think they want to do that again. And as a result, we're probably not going to see actual subsidized hardware, or at least not heavily subsidized. Maybe, maybe they'll agree to eat a little bit of cost, but not to the point that they're losing money per sale. In part because, let's be honest, if this is basically just a PC with some somewhat customized hardware, why wouldn't someone who wants a PC with these specs just straight up buy it and then replace the software with whatever they want? It doesn't sound like this is a thing that's going to be super locked down. So if that's the case, they don't want to sell something that's just subsidized for the sake of subsidizing. They're going to want to sell it at no worse than cost. And I think they're going to want to sell it at still above cost. Who knows? Maybe, and I'm gonna position this as kind of a weird thought, but what I think they should do is, instead of subsidizing the hardware, they should attach basically a free bonus with the hardware, where if you buy the hardware, instead of subsidizing the hardware cost, they subsidize the games you would buy to play on it. So basically, when you buy it, you would get, I don't know, some amount of money, like credit in the Steam store that you can just buy games with. So I think that is a better strategy than just trying to sell the hardware at some sort of subsidy. And to give kind of like a comparable thing, which I think if Microsoft did this, would actually be really successful, or would have been really successful. If they had just done like a, hey, buy an Xbox at such and such price, higher than it currently is, we'll just straight up give you a year of Game Pass. Like, if they had done that, think of how many people would have seen that and gone, oh my God, that makes the Xbox effectively worth blah, blah, blah. Like, that's so much cheaper than it sounds. And I think a lot of people would have reacted and responded very well to that. Less so now. I mean, it's a little too late to pull that off, but it would have been a good idea back then. Let's see. But yeah, I don't buy that the Steam machine is going to be comparable with, certainly not the lower end consoles. I think it's going to be more directly comparable with at least the PlayStation Pro. Which is, if I remember correctly, a PlayStation Pro, well, PS5 Pro is, what, $750 right now? Do I have that right? Or about $750? I don't think this is going to come in cheaper than that. I think it might be around that, but I don't think that they come in cheaper. But we'll see, because again, like, they can't sell this subsidized. Not really. I mean, again, maybe they can sell it at cost, but I don't think they do that. I think they have to make at least a few bucks on every sale. Otherwise, they could just be feeding a market that's like, oh, hey, we just want a PC. We're not buying any games. So, yeah, this is, one way or the other, this is a really interesting piece of hardware. Because, or, well, not just hardware, but this is an interesting product. Because part of their big sales pitch is it also plays a lot of games well. And again, there is a Verge article that discusses a lot of this, basically highlighting the point that you can play a lot of Windows games just as well, if not better, than you could play them literally on Windows with the same hardware. That's a big sales point. Proton has gotten to the stage where it is really like performance competitive, and that's exciting. It's interesting. It gives the potential for hardware to actually be reasonably priced, not egregiously priced, but reasonably priced, and still play a game that would otherwise be pretty demanding. Answers the question on multi-monitor support. Did I scroll over it? Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah, I guess that is 2 monitors. It definitely is. A little bit of me does. I hate to sound skeptical, but a little bit of me is wondering if bandwidth might be limited when you hook up a second monitor. I don't think it is. I'm just pondering that as a possibility. That's all. But it is not an impossibility that it might cut the refresh rate when both are attached. Okay, so let's see. Well, we're going to talk about the frame in a little bit. But all this being said, I think this is looking like at least an interesting piece of hardware. I want to see this succeed. I really do. Don't get me wrong. A little bit of me is concerned about the fact that Steam is already like the leading game store by a mile. I don't like seeing so much consolidation, and I do worry a little bit about the idea of Valve becoming too dominant in the space, but at the same time I like the idea of them giving pressure and pushback against consoles, so this could be exciting in that regard. But until we know a price, until we see what happens, I'm not holding my breath on anything. I just have to see how this actually plays out. Also, as I'm looking at it, little bit of a WTF moment. So just, and this is such a small thing, I'm just being nitpicky here, but okay, on the back, 2 USB-A ports and a USB-C port. By the way, those USB-A ports are USB 2. I think right here, we're seeing exactly the situation that I was saying. I think they ran out of PCI lanes, and as a result, they had to really cut back on everything. Anyway, note on the front, they have 2 USB 3A ports, but no USB-C port. What the hell, guys? You can do better. Do better. Put it. Why is the USB-C port even on the back? Put it on the front. You can do this. You're designing the hardware. You can do a USB-C port on the front. I mean, look, I get that there's probably actually somebody probably made a really good argument that in all likelihood, the USB-C port is probably going to be used for accessories that you're just going to leave plugged in all the time. And therefore, it probably makes sense to them to put it back there, because it's probably what you're going to plug your like extra dock into. Or 4 USB ports in 2026 is crazy. Oh my god, yes it is. I'm a little mad at them over this. To think there's so many things right now at this stage, like USB-C just is everywhere. And worst case scenario, get an adapter. Like, it's really easy to get adapters. Let's see. It's designed to plug into a TV. But yeah, this is a problem of their own making. That's my position on this. I think this is a problem of their own making. Also, it's not that I'm complaining. I think it's interesting though. Out of all the hardware I've seen so much that their choice is always to put an SD card slot, but Valve was like, nah, let's stick in a micro SD slot on a desktop system. Guys, you're the one hardware form factor that's actually supposed to go to full SD. Why are you putting in a micro SD slot? I don't get. The more I look at this, the more I'm running into just little things that are making me go, what the hell? And this has nothing to do with it, but again, just like add in the fact that it's old gigabit Ethernet, and again, we're looking at the old display port, old HDMI port. I'm sitting here wondering, like, what's going on here? And the only explanation I can come up with is I bet they're using a I'm going to call it a low-end CPU. And feel free to get mad at that choice of phrasing, but I think it's technically going to be accurate. Now, what I mean by low-end CPU is not that it's going to be a bad CPU, not that it's a budget CPU, and not that it's even actually low-end. What I mean by this is, and I apologize, I don't know AMD's product lines well enough to describe or use the right terminology here, but I think it's going to be kind of like if you were using Intel CPUs, and what you chose to do is, let's say you put on, let's say you used an i3, but like the highest end i3 you could get. Something that would even make a lot of i5s look, or not a lot, but something that would make some i5 look bad. Like an i3 that can outperform an i5 technically and legitimately, but only for the purposes with which it's intended. Whereas the i3 will also have fewer PCI lanes. It will have, it might be sacrificing a feature or two here or there. These are things that you give up by going to an i3 instead of an i5, but it's because of that it's also okay. So I have a hunch that's kind of what we're actually seeing here. So let's see. Can easily swap SD card. Yep, exactly. Oh, your guess is between for compatibility between Steam Deck and Frame. That would be why they'd go micro SD. That does make sense. Sort of. Actually, wait, why? Why would you... Hold on. No. I'm trying to picture scenarios where anyone would do that, and I can't come up with them. At what scenario does somebody say that software installed on one of these is something that I can just pull out the card, stick it into the other one, and the software would actually be functionally usable? Because, I mean, maybe that's a thing. Maybe Steam would enable that, and actually, if anything, Steam could enable that. But I don't think that's a scenario that, one, is likely to ever actually be a thing. Two, I think it's just isn't it for game storage. That's what I'm talking about. But that's kind of the issue, is if you pop the card out of one of them and stick it in out of one piece of hardware, a frame or the Steam machine. If you pop the card out of one of those and stick it into the other, would you necessarily be able to play the game automatically? Maybe that's supported, and again, Steam could do that. Like, that's from a software level, that's a really easy thing for Steam to be able to do. But would you want to? Is this something you could reliably and consistently do? Would it be a good experience? Is it something people are dying to do? I don't know. I kind of don't buy that it is. And even if it is, hot take, if you can buy a Steam machine, you can probably also buy the adapter card that costs like $1.50 or $2, just like an SD to micro SD adapter card. They're super cheap. It's literally just a card with the wires in it. It doesn't even have a controller or anything. It's literally just the wiring. I don't think that this is something that warranted going to micro SD. But again, also, I just can't see the scenario where you're going to be pulling your game install from one device and sticking it into the other. Maybe that exists. Maybe that is a thing. I'm just having trouble picturing it. Let's see. It could be a convenience feature to move between devices. Again, like, maybe it is. I'm just having trouble picturing the scenario where somebody is like, oh, hey, 1 minute I'm going to sit down and play, I don't know, name whatever game. I'm going to sit down and play that game on my Steam Deck. But you know what? I feel like moving from my office chair to my couch, so I'm just going to play on my frame instead. Hold on, let me pull the card out and move the game. I mean, okay, maybe somebody does it, but I don't think anyone does that. And even if you do, like, memory cards aren't that pricey anymore. So I kind of feel like you just install the game to both devices. And okay, maybe moving your save file is the difference, but I don't know. There's a lot about that scenario. I need to see the sales pitch before I understand how that's supposed to be a good enough thing to warrant that. And again, I'm just going to keep coming back to this. Like, you can get an adapter card. There's no reason that this should be a micro SD slot. And I love that this is the crux of the argument is, why is it a micro SD instead of an SD? Like, there's so many devices where I would argued time and time again, please just put in a micro SD. I don't want to deal with an SD card. On a laptop, seriously, please do not give me SD slots, give me micro SD slots. I am so tired of MacBook Pros having an SD slot and not a micro SD slot, because I don't want to have to deal with a card for that. But when we're talking about a desktop system like this, nah, I'm okay with having a card sticking out of it. It's fine. Like, that's not a sacrifice. So yeah, my position is that if it's a desktop, you shouldn't be fiddling with micro SD. Let's see. You're with Carson. That makes the most sense. Everything runs SteamOS and the game profile data is saved in the cloud. I'm not disputing any of that. I'm curious what I'm asking is, what is a scenario where you actually need to move your data by pulling the physical card out? Because your game profile data is in the cloud. Okay, great. So that transfers easily enough. That's just going to happen in the background. So the argument would be that you're going to move the game install data because you don't want to take the time to download and install that. Okay, I get that argument, but aren't you probably going to have an SD card for both the computer and the frame? And strictly speaking, like, why are you even installing to a micro SD card? Because trust me, read performance off of micro SD card is nothing compared to the flash storage that this thing's going to have built in. So are you really installing games to the micro SD card, or are you installing them to your built-in storage? Or is the argument that you'd be going the other direction? You install it first on the frame, and then you decide, I want to play this on my Steam machine? I'm just trying so hard to come up with the user scenario where this makes sense, and I don't have it. I'm sure it exists for some people. There will be a few hundred people who are like, oh my god, my favorite thing to do is play Halo on the frame, and then I pull the card out and walk over to my Steam machine and I pick up my game 3 minutes later. I'm sure that person exists, or a few hundred people would exist like that, but I don't think that it's a common enough thing. 512 gig isn't holding many games. Well, certainly, you're right, it isn't. Was that the storage? Okay, so they're going to have two models, 512 and 2 terabyte. And they both include high-speed micro SD. High-speed micro SD is not great. Let's see, where is... Okay, so this is going to sound like I am low-key being shady about this, but I was just sent a micro SD card by a company that is having me do a review. I can't talk about what the product I'm reviewing is, but they sent me a Lexar card, and this is a pretty high-end card. The data rates, I hate their packaging because I cut off the top of the package, and I was thinking, oh, I don't need to look at this again. I'm pretty sure it said 200 megabit per second, and since half of this is written in Chinese or something, it didn't actually specify, but I believe that that's read speed, and then it's 150 megabit per second write speed. Let's see. I wonder what the flash storage speeds are by comparison, which I'm confident this does not give you. Whatever that built-in SSD has, I don't think it's going to be anywhere close to the same speeds as the micro SD card. And by that, I mean, I think that whatever their built-in storage is, it's going to blow out that micro SD speed by like a mile. Not only that, but do you know where you should be installing stuff? A 2 terabyte micro SD is disposable. Oh, David. Oh, David. I don't know that I would agree on that. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're not egregious. But just to call it out, in terms of storage, I don't feel like these are, quote, disposable numbers. They're not terrible. Like, honestly, I thought they were going to be a bit higher. But 2 terabyte, if your starting price is $170, which again is actually, honestly, that is really good. That is way better than I thought it was going to be. Truthfully, I really thought the price was going to be like $199 to start, which is still close to that for anything but that. But how much is a 2 terabyte SSD? And that's where I was going to go with this. Not just price, but performance. Okay, so let's see. If we're going to go with the super cheap, let's just pick this Lexar that came up. Okay, so let's see, 2 terabyte SSD. Oh my god. Okay. So I'm not even going to try to pick the cheapest. I'm just picking cheaper. 160. So we're talking this micro SD card. It's 170. Here is a Samsung 990 Evo Plus. This is a really good SSD for 160. It's $10 cheaper. Okay. Now let's look at these speeds. So this memory card is 160 megabytes per second. Here, remember, 160. This SSD is 7,250 megabytes per second. I'm sorry, but no, I do not want to run a game off of. I don't want to run a game off of this. I don't want to. No chance. I do not want to run a game off of a micro SD card. Not if I can run a game off of this thing. I mean, it's just not a comparison. Wow. Thank you for on hovers. It's just no comparison. This is so much better performance. How long does it usually take to move games between an SD card and flash storage? Obviously, like, that's one of those situations where I wouldn't try to compare them just because, A, how big a game are we talking? You know, if you're talking about a game that takes 2 gigabytes versus, I don't know, the latest, no, Alyssa, I even said it. I said right from the start, this is a Samsung 990 Evo Plus. This is a high-end SSD. But it's still $10 cheaper than this. And yeah, $10 cheaper isn't a big difference, but that's also $10 cheaper while still giving, you know what? I'm not even going to try to do this math by hand. I'm just going to plug it in. This Samsung SSD is 45 times faster. 45 times faster than this SSD card. Or sorry, SD card. I'm sorry, but I don't want to play a game off of that when I could get this. Now, why do I say it that way? I think the key thing to remember here, not that one, no, here. Okay. I think the key thing to remember here is you still have this port right here, this USB-C port. And if not that one, you also have these USB 3 ports right here. You can plug in SSDs. You have the bandwidth to do this. You can plug in external storage. You don't need to F around with a micro SD card at all. There's no argument to do that. So I'm sorry, but get an external SSD bay or enclosure. Sorry. Get an external enclosure, stick in this SSD. You'll spend a few more bucks in total, but your performance is going to absolutely, completely blow out this. There's no way a micro SD card competes. Not even, there's no realm in which it competes. You could even stick, let me get my tab straight. You could even stick this on those USB 2 ports, and you're going to get way higher bandwidth, because those at least cap out at 480 megabytes per second. I believe it's 480. So you're talking about 3 times faster than what the micro SD card can even do. I'm sorry. There is no world in which I want to play a game off of this if I can play a game off of this. So Alyssa also saying go with Crucial. Believe me, I agree. Literally the reason that I picked Samsung is I did a search for 2TB SSD, and this was literally the thing that came up first. I didn't even bother shopping around, but the point is I immediately beat one of the first results that came up on the SSDs. And when I say I agree, I don't actually know where it's at right this moment. Actually, I think it's... Whoa. Almost knocked over something expensive. I think it's somewhere over my left shoulder. I have a Crucial SSD that I bought for a project. So, yeah, I'm already with you. Like, I'm generally more inclined to buy Crucial because it's it really got great performance, great reliability, while being cheaper than Samsung. Anyway, let's see. PS5 can also use those SSDs. I don't see why not. Let's see. Okay, you're highlighting the Crucial. I mean, again, I'm not disputing what's better. I'm literally just reaching for the first examples. But yeah, this is even cheaper, and technically the data rate is slightly lower. Very slightly lower at 7,100 megabytes per second as opposed to 7,250. But like that's such a minor difference. Who cares? Yeah, that's the whole thing. Like they're just in completely different leagues from a micro SD card. Let's see. But is it confirmed you can use external SSDs? If this thing is a PC, so it purportedly, well, not purportedly, we know for a fact, it is running SteamOS 3, which is based on Arch. So I don't see why it can't use SSDs. Arch Linux absolutely is a standard Linux OS in any appreciable way. As I recall, it is a little bit of a nuisance to work with, but that's a separate issue. So I don't see any reason at all why this would not be able to run SSDs. And any OS that I'm aware of, you can plug SSDs in. Correct me if I'm wrong, but can't you even do it with Chrome OS? Someone with Chrome OS, you'll have to actually tell me. But I'm pretty sure you can just plug an SSD in and treat it as an external drive, and you should be able to. And I can't think of any reason Steam can't install to an external. It certainly can on every OS that I've used it on, which is only Windows and Mac, but hey, I'm gonna count it. The question is, are they using a 2280 or 2230 NVMe? One, technically we don't, I would argue that we don't have to know that. Two, I'm not even discussing the internal storage. I'm literally saying that you could get an enclosure and stick an SSD in and still get way higher performance. Even if you're plugging it, worst case scenario, even if you're plugging it into a USB 2 port, you're still going to get 3 times faster performance than you can get out of the micro SD port. And actually, technically, that's not entirely accurate. You micro SD, I believe, can go up to 240. I might be wrong on that, but that's still half the max speed of a USB 2 port. So you can still outperform, even in the best case versus worst case scenario. Best case for micro SD versus the worst case for USB. You're still going to do better with an external plugged in on USB 2. Oh, can it be replaced? I no idea. But that is a good question, because this thing is supposedly very modular. That was the Steam frame. Regardless, this is supposedly this is basically a regular PC by any appreciable standard. So in theory, there's nothing stopping you from being able to use this, or from like replacing components. What I do hate is they say available in 2 storage sizes. They give the sizes, then say both with expandable storage via micro SD. That is, I don't buy for a second that you can't upgrade this thing by sticking in micro SD, or sorry, by sticking in an SSD in a USB slot or USB port. But I suppose there's a possibility that maybe that's not the case. If it's not, I want to meet the engineer that screwed that up. I want to meet them and shake their hand and be like, bro, you literally just like ruined this device. But hey, we'll see. People might buy a 1 terabyte SSD and install Windows on it. Who cares? So what? Go ahead. I don't think anybody is... I don't think anyone at Valve even cares if anyone does that. As long as they keep SteamOS installed and run that and play games on that, I think that's all they care about. After that, I don't think anybody there is going to care if you're like, oh, you know, I also stick Windows on this and I run it to do work. But then when I'm done, I boot it back to SteamOS and I play games. Like, as long as you're doing that, I don't think anyone at Valve even gives half a thought. Like, yeah, go ahead, do what you want. You can install whatever else on here. Install Chrome OS. Install, like, some bare Linux distro and use it as a server anytime you're not gaming. I bet nobody at Valve would even care half a second about that. As long as you boot back into SteamOS and occasionally buy games and play them, I think that's all they care about. So yeah, I think this is really interesting hardware, but it only becomes fully interesting once we know what the price is. So, and to that point, I'm going to say, I don't think this is successful as a product unless it is at least competing with the flagship pricing of a current console. And when I say competing with flagship pricing, I'm not saying it has to match PS5 Pro. It can be above PS5 Pro, but it has to be close. Like with PS5 Pro at $750, this needs to be, I would argue, no more than about like $800 to be competitive. Maybe you can squeeze up to $850. If it's over $850, I feel like this fails in the market. And fail is one of those terms. It's not entirely meaningful. But I think that if they can't move, oh yeah, exactly. 800 is still really good compared to a current gaming PC. And that's the problem. It's really good compared to a current gaming PC. Is it too good? Can they sell it for that? Or is Valve going to have to say, you know what? Nope, we can't do that. We have to do $950. If they have to do $950, if it's got to be $200 over the most expensive console on the market, I'm not sure that this sells in great numbers. And we got to see the specs too. Like right now, we have the concept. We have the sales pitch, which is gaming PC in a nice form factor with software that has been customized to kind of deliver the console experience. That's compelling. It sounds good. But we don't know the price. We don't know the final specs. We don't know the limitations. We haven't heard from anyone who's actually used this for more than like 30 minutes or whatever. All the hands-ons are people who got to test it on site. No one's taken this home, at least not that I'm aware of. There's nothing about this yet that is like real. And I think that's the thing. When reality slaps, and it's going to slap some people on the face. When reality slaps people across the face, this is either going to be the, oh my God, consoles just got destroyed in 2025, like it's the end of the classic console, or the, like everyone's going to come out saying the same thing of, hey, Valve had a nice idea, but it's still too expensive. Cheers, let's go back to talking about consoles like we always do. Like, it's one or the other. And maybe there's a middle ground. Maybe they find that price competitive point where it's where you want to get this, but you can only really afford it if you can afford it, kind of a thing. Otherwise, it's just not that. It's not the thing you're going to go for. Whatever that inflection point is, maybe that's what they hit. I don't know. But man, I need to see this actually be price competitive before I think that it shifts the industry in any appreciable way. It has to be price competitive and it has to be spec competitive. If it's not both of those, then it just isn't going to matter that much. And you say Digital Foundry and Gamers Nexus got a hands-on. Yeah, on site. And I don't know how guided it was. I didn't watch either of their things yet. But I saw a few other sites covering it, and everyone clearly was like, their stories explicitly talked about how much Valve's employees were like, okay, we're going to show you these games, and oh right, you can play these games that we have installed for you, and blah blah blah. Like, it was pretty clear they were not like just letting people fully play around with it. They wanted people to have to play again on site. They controlled that experience, and even that wasn't great. Though supposedly, at least The Verge, they highlighted that some of the games that they tried weren't necessarily playing as well as they thought that they should. And wait, am I mixing this up with The Frame? There's a chance I'm now thinking of The Frame. But supposedly there was something where the performance wasn't as good as it should have been. And Valve basically said, nope, that's a bug. Don't worry about it. It'll be fixed by release. I feel like I'm thinking of The Frame, but it could have been the Steam Machine. And let's be honest, they're both kind of relying on the same basic mechanics, so it could be both, not just one of them. All that said, I'm excited for this. I actually am. I'm just not holding my breath that it's going to reshape the industry. I really think that we have to wait and see what this does. And not only that, I think we're also just going to have to wait for the next console generation to decide, is this reshaping anything? Because let's be honest, this is also one of those things where this could come out in 2026. Did they share? I don't think they did. When this is coming. Hey, Hoopy, how's it going? Took me a minute to place the name and the icon, but I did. Early 2026 for all the hardware. Okay. That's interesting. Okay, so that's good. Oh, it's a YouTube thing. So YouTube broke the names. And for whatever reason, they're just showing your actual username, which, yeah, I kind of hate that. They're basically just doxing all of their users now in chat. Yeah, thanks, YouTube. Good way to disincentivize people from chatting or commenting. Actually, wait, you know what? I haven't checked if this applies to comments. All I know is that it affects live stream chat. But either way, I don't like that. I want it to be chosen nicknames too. I just think that looks better. But for right now, this is how it works. Okay, so anyway, yeah, the Steam Machine, like I said, I want to see this work. I think that we need competition against the consoles to get the consoles into a better, like, competitive place. Which is a funny thing to say because, oh my god, are they really struggling so much right now. But, yeah, I think that a swift kick in the ass by something like this would really move the needle. Not only that, I'm going to go out on a weird limb here and say it would be good for the gaming industry in terms of, like, pressuring game developers to stop trying to build the latest game to demand the absolute latest hardware. This was a problem that happened with Cyberpunk. It was a problem that happened with Borderlands 4. Like, why on earth do we have to have hardware built in just like the last 2 years to play a game at decent frame rates with decent quality? That should not be a thing. It should never be a thing. I mean, look, I'm okay with the idea that the occasional crisis needs to be made. Somebody needs to make the new crisis here and there. Go ahead. But like, there are also times that a major game should probably, it needs to be a rare occurrence that something comes out and it's like, yeah, you basically just need to buy literally the highest end hardware that exists on the market today to play the game. That should be a thing that happens once, like maybe once or twice in a decade. It shouldn't be a thing that happens with like every dozen or so releases that are just major games. Like, it should not be at that regularity that they're demanding that much power. Making Linux gaming more viable. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it is. It legitimately is. It's just, we'll see. I feel like Linux gaming is still one of those things that's, it exists. It's there. If you want to be a gamer on Linux, you can certainly do it. But it's also, you know, still not exactly there. It's in better shape than Mac OS for gaming. But that's not saying a lot. Yeah, this is Linux and plays games. That's absolutely true. 100%. It is Linux. It plays games. It plays Windows games, which is certainly a big deal. And again, like, that was a big part of what the Verge article really focused on is, hey, the things that they have accomplished with Proton, when it's outperforming Windows machines. That's huge. That they're doing good work. It's just, it doesn't always work. Some games just literally crash on it. Some just can't be played. Like, that's also a problem too. And especially anything with anti-cheat just falls over on Proton. Or usually it does. Imagine 2026 is a year of gaming Linux and Linux on desktop, but for entirely unrelated reasons. Look, I will acknowledge gaming on Linux. Okay. Linux on desktop, I'm kind of still not buying that one happening. Man, there are just so many pieces of software that are designed for Windows that companies use, and as a result, it just keeps holding this hard line, locks people in on the whole thing. Counting Android laptops as Linux on desktop, yeah, I'm not prepared to go there. And yeah, got to get anti-cheat working on Linux. Good luck. Look, I'm not gonna be super dismissive of that because maybe it happens, but I also don't see it happening. It sounds so good. It sounds like something we want, but and it even sounds like something that could happen. It's just not gonna happen. Not that easily. We're gonna have to see the day that Linux gaming suddenly is like the holy crap, like 35-40% of all gaming is happening on Linux, at which point all of a sudden all the anti-cheat companies are going to be like, okay, we'll figure it out now, we'll make this happen now, like it's finally worth it to us, we'll make it happen. To be fair, the counterpoint to me is if Android laptops existing counted, Chrome OS has to count too. No, see, here's the thing. I'll at least count Chrome OS. I'm not counting Android laptops. Not till that matters. And right now, they're insignificant. They basically don't. I mean, they exist, but they don't exist. Come on. So, 2026 is finally the year of Linux. Wouldn't that be wild if that was actually true? Look, I'm not going to be hateful. I'm just going to be realistic. I don't think we're there yet. It sounds so good. We're just not there yet. Okay, so how long have I been on this subject? I've been on this subject for at least an hour. So don't know how much the specs have been discussed, but what's your take on them being, we'll say, kind of unimpressive? Because you have a theory. Okay. I did actually talk a lot about specs. And I really called out the fact that they didn't share any useful specs yet. Carson, exactly. My tab order, just so you know, I was going to go to the controller next and there's not much to say about the controller, but I was going to talk about that for, at least a minute. And then the next frame I have open is for the frame. Or sorry, I said the next frame I have open. The next tab I have open is for the frame. And then finally, I'm ending on the Android games thing. Because I honestly, I think that's the biggest deal. Out of all the things announced, I think that's the biggest deal. But we'll come back to it. Okay, so I'm sure Hoopy is typing out the theory or something related to it, which, dude, YouTube's chat length is gonna make that hell. Your theory is, in short, is Valve wants to leave room above this for the dedicated PC crowd. Set this as the minimum specs for PC gaming. Okay, that's not far off from what I suggested. Um, it's pretty close. Well, I made allusion to it, but I didn't really spend a lot of time sitting on it. One of the things I said is, if this becomes a big enough part of the market, if enough people buy the Steam machine and it becomes relevant, then a lot of game studios are going to start looking at it as the thing that they need to make sure that they target and support. Not necessarily give it the best experience, not necessarily optimize for it, but at least they have to consider it. And in my estimation, they need to move somewhere around, well, I said at the time 5 million units. I'm even willing to come down to 4 million. I think they need to at least match what the Steam Deck did in units as of the start of this year. They need to at least hit that point. 4 million units. Otherwise, I don't think any game studio is going to take this seriously enough that they're going to treat it as a thing that has to be targeted. If they move enough units and they can brag about numbers, I think game studios start looking at this and saying, okay, we'll treat this as must support configuration. If they can reach that point, then yes, gaming on PC, and this is going to sound like such a weird way to phrase it, but gaming on PC is fixed. Because what they need to be able to do is get game studios to not make a game where the minimum viable product is so demanding that a bunch of configurations just simply can't run it. That's it. That's my hot take on this. They have to make the configurations make it so you can realistically play a high-end game, not a great graphics, not a great detail, not a incredible draw distances, but it has to be that a decent game, or any new game that comes out, has to at least perform acceptably on a hardware like this. If they can set that as a standard, that is gold. That is what we need to see. And I think that well, as I said, that sort of fixes the gaming industry. That fixes one of the biggest problems that the gaming industry has had, where too many games come out and they just have too high requirements. But yeah, give a floor to the market, and that's really good. But I have a bit of a challenge to that issue. How often does the Steam machine get updated? What's the update cycle on this? That's one thing no one's brought up, because no one knows. Like, no one has a chance of knowing that. How often is Valve going to update this hardware? Let's assume for a second that they sell. I'm just going to throw out a number. You know what? Oh, okay. Let's see. Okay, so the PS5 came out in 2020. All right, so the PlayStation. Jesus, really? Oh, okay. I was gonna say that can't be the right number. I'm trying to look up how many. That is not a useful number. Oh, here we go. Okay. PS5 hardware unit sales. During 2020, where they've only had 2 quarters anyway, They sold 7.8 million units. In 2021, let's use that because I think that's the better frame of reference. In 2021, Sony sold a combined 11.5 million units. Okay, let's say that the Steam machine, if they can successfully sell, I'm going to go back to the same number I did before, 5 million. If they can sell 5 million, great. Okay. How long before they update it? I don't see them updating it a year later, right? A year is too soon. How about they sell it, or they update it at 2 years? It's plausible. I think people won't be too mad about that, but they might be because obviously, it's a little dodgy. Yeah, it's been almost 4 years since the Steam Deck. Honestly, and that's kind of what I was hitting towards. What if they decide to update this like every 3 years? I mean, they could do it every year. Literally, they could do it every year. They could do basically the Apple update cycle, where you just say, all right, the current thing, which we make it good, and we're gonna keep updating it just to like what is the current at the time most cost-effective hardware build. That's what Apple used to strategize with on most of their Macs. If that's what they do, they could do yearly updates, but what effect does that have on the game industry? Are game studios really going to be targeting a specific Steam machine, or are they going to say, oh, we should probably just we can make whatever we want, and then we'll just say, hey, it only really works on the last 2 Steam machines. They could do that, but that's not really setting that minimum bar anymore. Or does Valve choose more of a long-term update cycle, where maybe they only update the hardware, let's say every 4 years? That feels more like an actual console update cycle. And game developers are basically going to be saying pretty universally, hey, we have to build our games to support the Steam machine that is current, and at least for like maybe a year or 2 years into each new Steam machine update, then they might support that too. And that's where this starts becoming a really weird scenario where Valve kind of dictates so much of the play timing, the circumstances around this. I think that shifts so much of this situation. And I think it could get really wild watching how that plays out. It's scary, it's good, but it's also, I don't know. There's so many different ways that this could affect the market. Let's see. Alyssa, the 9th gen consoles have super outdated CPU. Oh, okay, but who cares? It's the CPU. I mean, honestly, when we're talking about consoles, GPU is what matters anyway. At least more than CPU does. And I mean, at this stage, the consoles are also pretty old. It's okay if they're at this stage outdated, because they're all talking about, or not talking about, but they're all sort of lining up the cards for their next generation. So yeah, of course they're pretty old. Let's see. Hoopy saying you could see them doing every CPU and GPU generation. Yeah, they could. That's what Apple did. Apple got away with, for what was it, a decade, roughly. They would only release like MacBook updates, Mac updates. All the Mac hardware would get updated with each new generation of Intel CPU. That's it. They basically would do an update whenever Intel updated its CPUs, and Apple would choose one model per particular piece of hardware, and that's what they stuck with. And that worked for a long time. Do you think that's a good idea here? I mean, it worked for Apple then. Do you think it works for Apple now? I mean, there's a reason Apple decided to stop buying Intel CPUs and start making their own. Okay, there are 2, 3, there's actually like 8 good reasons, but it stopped working for Apple. I think even Valve is probably looking at this situation thinking, how quick could we move to, let's say, Qualcomm? How quick could we move to just like making our own custom CPUs? How quick could we do any of this stuff? What's the software layer look like? What do we need to do to make that happen? Valve could be looking at that, and their plan is, we'll use Intel today, or sorry, AMD. It's not Intel. But like, we'll use AMD today, but how long do we have to? Any smart company's already asking that question. Let's see, Alyssa. A desktop-like hardware makes sense every 3 years. Well, it makes sense every 3 years in an upgrade cycle, but should that be what the consumer has to choose from when they are thinking about buying this? And that's the tricky part of this. What about that person who comes along and is like, I want to buy something, but man, the Steam machine that's out right now is 2.5 years old. Do I wait 6 months just so I can buy the new one, or do I buy something that's going to be outdated in just as little as 6 months? That sucks. No one wants that as their buying decision. That's the consumer issue. Like, nobody... I remember being this person looking at every Mac that was announced. There's a reason. I'm not kidding. There's a reason why my first MacBook Pro stayed in service for 8.5 years. I wanted to buy a new one at 5 years. At 5 years in, I wanted to buy a new one. I didn't buy a new one because every single iteration that came out after that was it was a bad CPU generation, where Intel had massive problems, or it was a generation that notoriously had a really terrible keyboard, or it was a generation that had, I think one of the times I skipped it, it was because like the GPU options were bad or something. I don't remember all of them anymore, but I kept waiting and waiting and waiting. I kept pushing it off because I was waiting for that perfect laptop release, that perfect MacBook Pro to come out. And because of bad generational timing and a bunch of other situations, I just kept waiting, and it was miserable. What happens if Valve decides, okay, we're going to go on a 3-year update cycle, or we're going to wait for certain generational jumps, and then they wait, and then the next one they come out with, every reviewer comes out like a week later saying, oh yeah, this chip sucks, no one should get this. And then Valve is stuck on that for, say, 3 years. Man, imagine people waiting not just 6 months to get the new one, but then the new one comes out and it's like, oh no, this sucks, no one should get it. And then you're gonna what, wait 3 more years? See, this is what's complicated about product strategy, because logically, like, for the consumer, the actual best thing, and it sucks because this also is annoying, but the best thing for the consumer is to release a new version literally every time a new chip comes out. because then the consumer can just come along and say, what's the latest one and is it good? And as long as the latest one is good, then they just buy the latest one and move on. Like, that's a non-issue. For the market, that's okay. For game studios, that's terrible. That's awful for game studios, because then what do you build for? Do you build for the latest chip? No, that's ridiculous. Do you build for a chip from, 2 years ago, 4 years ago? Do you set a minimum? What would the minimum be? What if a new chip comes out and it's kind of actually not really any more performant than an old chip? Does that factor into your decisions? What if the last 2 years the new chips are just blowing everything out of the water, but because of price, maybe they have to raise the hardware prices? All of these things factor in, and they really make it a lot more complicated. So I'm just saying, like, this is one of those situations where Valve could be stepping into sort of throwing the market for a really complicated loop. And it all plays out really, really weird. And they have to be able to read tea leaves in order to know what to do. And nobody's that good. No one knows that far ahead what the industries are going to be like, what they're going to do. Let's see. Okay, so let me catch up on comments real quick. Let's see. Hoopy, always stay at about N-1 or N-2 for middle upper end experience. Yeah, I mean, logically that would make sense, but maybe it doesn't in certain generations. And obviously, like, all game studios will sort of adapt, and the market will adapt. Like, nothing is set in stone. But yeah, there's probably going to be like a general wisdom of what companies should be trying to do and deliver. By the way, I haven't mentioned it at all, but just to mention, so I'm not like forgetting it. But Valve is selling this hardware. Valve also has to support this hardware. So if they update the hardware every year, that means that they have to deliver actual support for this hardware, software support and customer service and all that stuff for different versions of hardware every year, if that's how often they update it. If they update it every 4 years, okay, well, then they're only going to end up supporting like two models of hardware for that period of time. Like, support is a pain, man. Support sucks. It's definitely not fun, but it's another one of those things you just have to factor in. Let's see. Steam Deck is targeting 1280 by 720 at 60. It doesn't need super beefy hardware. No, it doesn't. But I'm going to argue handheld changes that equation completely anyway. Sorry, but handheld just changes every equation. People forgive so much stuff on handheld. Just remember, the original Nintendo came out, and sure, it was just standard def. It was in color. Then the Game Boy came out. The Game Boy came out well after the NES came out. And that wasn't even black and white. Like, that was just the worst version of a liquid crystal display that was monotone with a yellow background, or yellow-green background. Handheld, I'm sorry, does not follow the same rules. So yeah, I mean, Steam Deck is great, but the expectations are just lower. When we're talking about something like this, it's totally different game. Apparently Qualcomm's x86 to ARM support is already a pretty good solution from the sound of the Snapdragon PCs. We'll see. I don't know enough about where it's at right now, but we'll see. I'm sure it's not bad, but I'm not expecting it to be as good as Apple's. And I think that's that's one of those things where if you're not as good as Apple's, you can be like 5% worse and be great. If you're 10% worse, you're maybe okay. If you're 15% worse, which is, let's be honest, that's not technically that big of a difference. Like, to be 85% as good as Apple's sounds really good. The problem is when you actually try to start using something that is just 15% worse, where is it worse? Like, what thing is performing worse? Or what thing doesn't work? Or how much more, like, how are the stability issues or anything like that? When you start factoring in those questions, yeah, it matters. But you say, wouldn't put it past Valve to be seriously considering something like that. Maybe they are. Now I gotta say, I'm always a little incredulous about ARM performance right now, because ARM is awesome, but translation layers are messy and don't always work. Especially when you're talking about the gaming industry, where you've already got things that sometimes don't work as or sometimes are built to be very demanding or perform certain ways. Let's see. So unlike Apple, Valve isn't going to get tired of maintaining a compat library indefinitely. They already do Proton. I agree. Well, to an extent. I think there comes a day, if things go the right direction, eventually Valve gets to say, you know what, we don't need to do this anymore because everyone's already just building for Linux. When that day comes, Proton's dead. But yeah, it's probably like 10 years out at least. So yeah, I don't see that coming anytime soon. And it's in their best interest just to keep it going. Whereas Apple, it is in Apple's exclusionary interest to keep or to abandon Rosetta. Oh, Rosetta 2. It took me a second to remember that. It is in Apple's interest to kill Rosetta 2 reasonably young, because they really want to get developers to commit to building native stuff. Not because they care about performance, but because they really care about having developers whose core competency has to be building in Swift. That could turn into a whole rant. I'm not going to do that right now. By the way, I should have also add, like, my voice, I totally screwed it up earlier this week, and it's already, like, it's been hurting. So I probably shouldn't be going as long as I know I'm going to today, but here we go. Okay, anyway, let's see. Alyssa, AMD updates their architecture every 2 to 2.5 years. Okay, so, I mean, I was saying 3, but yeah, it's in that neighborhood. Like, if the update cycle follows the generations, that's a wide gap. How many people want to be sitting there saying, do I buy the thing that's going to get updated in 6 months? That's not a good purchase decision. You don't want to be stuck in that decision of waiting 6 months to get the new thing, or like buy a thing now and be annoyed that you bought it a little too early to get the latest and greatest. Let's see, Hoopy. honestly, they're Valve. They'll probably just rev them whenever they feel is best and not worry too much about how many units they're shipping year over year. We'll see. I think Valve cares. They don't care as much as Apple. They don't care as much as Sony or Microsoft. They don't care as much as various other companies when it comes to unit sales. They have enough money coming in, and they have a whole core business that can support them, even if this one is kind of doing poorly. But they care. They have to care. No company can just casually ignore it. So I think we'll just have to watch how they play it. And obviously it's going to be a while before there's a new release, no matter what. Like at minimum, I don't see any scenario where Valve is like, oh, hey, we released a new model in, I don't know, March. And, oh, by the way, it's October. We've got a new model now. They could do that. I don't think they're going to. But we'll see. And who knows? Maybe Valve's strategy eventually is we're not going to release new models, like new generational models all the time. But maybe they start releasing like a base model, and then a year later they do like a pro version. Don't know. They could do that. Let's see. Hoopy, no reason for them to have a fixed policy on timelines. They didn't do anything else that way. Agreed. Totally correct. But from a buyer's perspective, no buyer cares what Valve's desirable timeline is. Buyers care about what's out and what they can predict. Let's be fair. Apple did not used to have fixed timelines for any of their products either. And then they came out with the iPhone. Why did they do yearly releases on the iPhone? Because customers wanted it. Customers followed it. If Apple didn't do yearly releases on the iPhone, customers would have been angry or annoyed. I'm not saying that these are reasons Valve should do anything. I'm just saying that this is why Valve might decide to do something with this. I don't think they will. I'm not making any sort of argument suggesting that I think they will. I'm just saying we can't rule it out. We can't know what their intentions or strategy will be. All we can do is try to predict what their approach will eventually be. Let's see. Old AMD hardware is still viable. Sure. But not for as many games. And depending on what the release cycle is like and how much any particular piece of hardware is still viable, maybe they or not them, but maybe customers start looking to do more regular replacements. And some of this will also factor in on price. Obviously, like if you're a customer and you're sitting there going, oh, hey, the Steam machine just got an update. You know what? It's $700. And the one that I have right now was the previous generation. I could sell it and get like $250, $300. I could cover that difference. So people will look at it that way, and there will be a lot of like upgrade cycling going on. So, assuming that it's all successful and this becomes a thing. These are all different parts of the equation. These are all different parts of how you do that math, and it's stuff that in some ways Valve doesn't need to care about it. In other ways they do, and they need to consider, are certain things should we have an upgrade cycle that maybe caters to a certain upgrade cycle? Should we feature a certain thing? Should we who knows? Maybe they at some point turn around and say, you know what? Let's do trade-ins. They can do all of these things. It's all possible. Let's see. Gaming on a Zen 3 based CPU in 2020 is still very viable in 2025. Sure, why not? I'm not arguing for a second that like a generation or even two back is bad. But to be fair, you're bringing up CPUs too. Not to say GPUs are any different, but CPUs, I would argue, when it comes to gaming, CPUs are so much less relevant than the GPU. Hoopy, you think there's a real chance their goal here is to just eat all the game sales currently happening on Xbox when the platform goes belly up instead of conceding them all to Sony? I think there's a real chance their goal here is to just eat all the game sales currently happening on Xbox when that platform goes belly up instead of conceding them all to Sony. So what you're saying is they want to get out in front of the death of Xbox, and as long as they get out in front, they'll get those sales instead of Sony being able to sort of take over the whole market. I think that's what you're saying. Then you go on to say, and if they make a tidy hardware profit on top, I think that's on top of those new customers, is a nice side outcome. I don't disagree with any of that. I think that sounds perfectly rational. I think that I'm not. So what you're ultimately saying is you think that they just announced earlier than they needed to because Xbox is like just completely eating ass, right? Like that. You're talking about the timing of their announcement more than anything, correct? Because I can't see a scenario where any of their other launch strategy stuff would really affect that. But the timing of just announcing now without having the hardware ready to release, that part I could see it. Because the way that the current sentiment, there are certainly a lot of people who are basically just raising their middle fingers to Microsoft. They want to get away from that ecosystem. A lot of people are certainly talking about it like Xbox is dead. The days of Xbox are over and there's just nothing left. Now, I don't agree with that sentiment. I think we're still probably a good couple years away from being able to conclusively say that Xbox is doomed. But I wouldn't write it off as a certain really distinct possibility. You're thinking they only are making couch hardware because they see the perfect opportunity to sweep in before Xbox dies. But the real prize here are the Xbox Live purchases, not the console purchases. I will half agree on that. So you weren't here for it, but at the beginning of this subject, or near the beginning, I was saying back then, I don't think that they sell the hardware anywhere below breaking even. I don't think they subsidize at all. I think they have to make money on the hardware, or at least break even, but I think they have to make money on the hardware. And then we'll see where it goes when it comes to game sales. But there's just no scenario where they're not making money on hardware. I'm a little skeptical about. I'm a little skeptical about one thing that's kind of implied with what you're suggesting, where you say you're thinking they're only making couch hardware because they see the perfect opportunity to sweep in before Xbox dies. The one reservation I have about that is we know how product schedules go. I think the death of Xbox is something that was predictable 3 or 4 months ago. I'm not sure it would have been predictable 6 months ago. And that's the problem. 6 months, is that? I don't know. Maybe 6 months is the wrong timeline, but it's this year. Like, if you go back to the beginning of this year, I don't think anyone was predicting with good, credible logic. I don't think anyone was predicting the death of Xbox. And so for that reason, that's the only catch here. I think that they've been working on this for a while. The question is, did they start working on it when it became obvious that Xbox was doomed? Or did they wait? Or, sorry, were they already just working on this and it just kind of was lucky that Xbox is really, really just doing such bad things to itself? And at that point, Valve had to be like, oh, you know what? We just happen to be working on the perfect solution. Let's try to replace Xbox. And let's announce earlier. Let's make sure we have a product ready to show off and push. Because that's so hard to predict. Because let's be honest, like, the Steam Machine, this is not a high-tech device in terms of like design. When it comes down to it, this is something that if you took a even minimally talented electronics product designer, they could have come up with the Steam Machine in the span of working prototype in a month. You could reach out to a factory and be ready to mass produce this in 2.5 to 3 months. Yeah, Lenovo could have easily made this. 100%. This is not hard hardware. It's a box with a fan in it. This is like... I remember people who made HTPCs, short for home theater PC, back in the mid-2000s. Almost exactly like this. They weren't customized quite to this level, but the customizations are all just surface level stuff anyway. I remember people easily making stuff just like this. And that was 20 years ago. This is not difficult hardware. That being said, the software, the product lines, all of that stuff, that's all stuff that they've been working on for years. I don't think that they read any tea leaves and predicted anything. I think they have actually been working on this, and it just really was such luck. Like, they just happened to time it perfectly and get it exactly right. Okay, so going back, you said, not suggesting they fully subsidize it, just to say that they're not as motivated to sell anyone their second machine as their first. Okay, not quite sure I followed the exact phrasing of that, but yeah, I generally agree. Let's see. Theory doesn't assume the more recent timelines of Xbox dying. You think that's just icing on the cake? Okay, yeah. Then we're in agreement on that then, because yeah, I don't think that they read any tea leaves. I don't think that they scraped together something at the last second. Even though I fully think they could have. I don't think that's what happened here. I think they've been working on this, and it just so happened that they got really, really lucky. And Xbox is just doing everything wrong. And this just happened to work out. Because, hey, luck is luck. Like, don't disregard the advantage of just being super lucky. Because it's, when it happens, it happens. You say, this is a Lenovo workstation sold at Best Buy. Truth. Honestly, what's funny to me is it just in that vein. The amount of customization that they did for this, they put in a light bar and they put in the Valve logo on the back of the fan, or the fan grill. And I'm sure that they made a few other little customizations here and there, which did all really basic things you can do with the motherboard. That being said, imagine if Razer did this, or Alienware, or any other company that actually puts effort into their customizations. Man, this is so basic. This looks, just to look at the lines, to look at the design of this, this is about just one step removed from white label. This is so close to being a white label product. There's the only thing that really makes me think it's not is the light bar. Otherwise, this absolutely could just be a white label product, and they stuck their own customized OS on it. That puts a weird spin on this. Let's see. Did that finish my Steam drops or Twitch drops? I think it did. Yay. Okay, I'm gonna close that stream just because I honestly, like, I shouldn't be, but I keep glancing over and watching this Overwatch game that's going on just on the other screen, and I'm trying not to, but I'm able to maintain my train of thought while also just glancing over and watching as somebody's playing Bastion, trying to rip up a tank. It's just a thing. All right. So anyway, I've been sitting on this same animation for like an hour and something. So let's change it. That's probably more than an hour now. Let's change it to the controller. And I don't have a lot to say about this controller. It looks kind of funky and goofy, but it also happens to be kind of like the all-in-one controller. So they've got obviously the 4 regular buttons. They've got trigger and bumpers on for both sides. That's pretty normal. They've also got rear buttons that are shown there. They've got dual touch pads on the front, and of course 2 sticks in the PlayStation configuration, not the Xbox configuration, because baby, the PlayStation configuration is just simply better. I do not want any ats about that because y'all know it's true. Okay, just had to get that out of the way. Let's see. You were turned off at first, but we're just thinking they did touchpads instead of joysticks again. Well, the touchpads are just interesting. GameCube configuration was peak. I honestly don't remember GameCube at all. Hold on. I will look that up. GameCube controller. Oh, that one. Okay, yeah, I definitely saw that one. It was a choice. That's what I'll give it. It was a choice. No, there was something cool about that. I don't think I ever actually played on one. I watched other people use it quite a bit, and I don't remember ever hearing anyone complain about it, but yeah, I don't think I've ever actually used one of those. I guess for anyone watching real quick, I'll just pop open the tab to show. Like, this is, well, technically that's a Switch version, but here we go. You know, here's a Nintendo GameCube controller. And yeah, that's the Xbox configuration, but done with a different just different controller style. And yeah, there's a lot to take away from that, and I'm not sure how much is good and how much is bad, but there's a lot. Let's see. The remake for the Switch 2 feels exactly like how you remember it. Shout out to it having one shoulder button but not the other. Oh my god, I can even see it in this image. Yeah, the right shoulder button exists, but not, there isn't one on the left. I didn't even realize that. Oh my god, that is such a weird choice. Yeah, here's a better image of it. Oh, that is so weird. Why? It makes me uncomfortable. There's some part of me that's like, okay, but what about symmetry? And then my brain melts. What about symmetry? Nope. Forget it. No symmetry. Can't do that. Like, there's literally zero symmetry to this remote except for the frame. Every single thing is not mirrored on the other side, except I guess the triggers, but still. It's not Xbox style because one joystick is smaller than the other. I feel like that's splitting hairs, but if you want to go that way, okay. The triggers also have clicky button at the bottom after you use all the analog trigger. What? What? Who designed it? Why? Did they design it, or did someone just get high? Who puts the clicky at the bottom? The actuation should not happen there. Okay. I'm struggling with this notion, but okay. Anyway, so I don't really have anything to say about the Steam controller, not beyond just the hey, this is what they're expecting people to play with. But I do think it's interesting, at least in, like, it's so packed with buttons. That's kind of cool. But beyond that, again, just not really much to say. You played a Lego racing game where it was an analog throttle, but if you then pressed it all the way for the digital input at the end, it turboed. That's kind of interesting. Not good necessarily, but interesting. Okay. So, moving on to... Wait, what? Oh. The moment that popped up, it was sitting on their controller, but this is Steam Frame. Are there haptics? That's actually a good question. I did not think about that, but there have to be, right? Like, can you make a controller now that doesn't have haptics? There definitely are. So yeah. High definition rumble. Steam controller's powerful motors are capable of handling complex waveforms for immersive, accurate haptics. So yeah, it's in there. And they have a gyro. So tilt control is going to be a thing. That's good. Let's see. Did they say anything more about haptics? No. Not really. Oh, haptics. 4 haptic motors. 2 LRA haptic motors in trackpads for HD tactile feedback in the trackpads. That's interesting. And 2 high output LRA haptic motors and grips for HD game haptics, including rumble. Okay, it's not that I would expect them to support this, but I think my disappointment here... Carson, I will come back to the Hall Effect thing because they actually beat that. They're doing better than Hall Effect. Okay, so the one disappointment here is that they don't have any haptics on the triggers, because that's one of the things that they added, or well, yeah, they added it with the PS5 in their DualShock 5 or DualSense, I think it's DualShock 5s. They added haptics on the triggers, and almost everyone I've heard talk about that says that it is such a cool addition and it should basically be everywhere. Now granted, some people just don't like it, but whatever. I would kind of like to see that get implemented in PC, because why not? Let's see. Okay, so the thumbsticks. Yeah, they're using, I guess it's TMR. I can never remember the name of it, but they're using something that is, it's better than Hall Effect at preventing stick drift, and it's basically more responsive. So, yeah, they basically just ignored Hall Effect entirely and went with something just even better. And it's a thing that is like the new must get, but it's not that widespread yet. So Hall Effect is becoming kind of widespread and almost universal. It will be in another year or two probably. And Valve just skipped past that. They're using whatever the new thing is, which I guess is TMR. I thought there was a different different shorthand for it, but I could easily be just misremembering. Let's see. Was there anything else? I don't think so. Bluetooth 4.2 minimum, 5.0 is recommended. Well, 5 or higher is recommended. Yeah, that kind of checks out. Let's see. Just trying to see if anything else jumps out at me. I don't think so. This is a pretty, like, outside of the touchpads and outside of the fact that they're using TMR thumbsticks, like, that's those are really the two interesting things here. Almost everything else about this, it's pretty much just generic controller. Not hating it, not loving it, but they did do a couple smart things, and they did one or two things that are just like, meh, whatever. Okay, so let's see how much of my voice I still have left at the end of this, or even halfway through it. The frame. Steam Frame. This is their new VR headset. It's a little more budget than the Index. Certainly more budget than the Index. It's what, half the price? It has some new features. It has some improvements. It's also kind of performance-wise kind of weak. And while it can certainly run games locally, by all accounts, what they really want you to be doing is streaming games from your PC, which is interesting. I don't love that. I don't hate it either, but I'm not sure I love it. So, this, as anyone who's ever tethered, I'm sure already knows, like the basic concept is, for streaming, you really need to have a PC that is relatively beefy and good for games. And then with the Index or most other headsets, you would just connect by a wire. With the frame, you can connect wirelessly. And basically the game is playing on the PC and it just has to render out the visual and then play back the visual on the headset here. Apparently this one performs really well. All the hands-on details that I saw said that yeah, they're absolutely blowing it out of the water in terms of speed of refresh rate. So it looks good and you can't really tell that you're not wired. That's impressive. I don't have complaints about that. Oh, Hoopy popped in saying, wow, it's 7. On the shoulders of the controller are 2 pressure-sensitive analog triggers marked L and R, as well as 1 digital button marked Z, which sits in the front of the R trigger. The L and R triggers feature both analog and digital capabilities. Each behaves as a typical analog trigger until fully depressed, at which point the button clicks to register an additional digital signal. Okay, so this is talking about the GameCube controller. It's interesting. Also, Discord. We don't need every single quest that you add to pop up. Just saying. All right. Man, my energy for this is quickly falling. I've had a long day. So I'm going to kind of speed through this a little bit. But yeah, the frame is looking like a really interesting piece of hardware. It seems like they're kind of trying to solve that issue where the Index was too expensive for people who want to do or who have a PC that they can actually stream a game from. The Quest obviously has its own reasons why you don't want to do that, some of which are obviously connections to Zuckerberg. So this seems to be kind of solving their price issue, but doing it by focusing a little bit more on that game streaming aspect. And then you can still play stuff locally. But the stuff you play locally, it's from everything I read, the idea is you're probably going to do it at like lower performance, lower resolution. It's not going to look as good. You're giving up a few things, but thanks to the work that they've done with Proton, you can still play a lot of games, and it looks good enough to play locally. It also supports Android apps, which I'm going to come back to shortly. But yeah, this looks really compelling. it won't really be for me, because most of the games that you would play on it, you're probably going to be playing on Windows, which I don't exactly have a good solution for. But yeah, this sounds like good hardware. They're using a lot of the same like cool techniques to do like low res, or I'm gonna call it low resolution rendering, but that's not exactly what it is. But they're basically rendering the whole scene and then choosing which pixels should get high resolution versus which ones kind of get lower quality. And they're doing that based on eye tracking, which is a feature that we've heard of with Apple talking quite a bit about it. It's foveated rendering, which in this case it's foveated foveated transmission or something. I forget what they were calling it. Anyway, regardless, really some cool technology goes into this. Again, I read a Verge article that kind of went over a lot of it, and pretty much everything sounds cool. Like, they did a good job. I'm not sure how well this is going to turn out once it releases. I want to see that. It runs Arch, and you can also sideload Android apps. Yes. Or wait, does this run Arch? I'm pretty sure it does, but let's see. Don't care about controller software. SteamOS 3 Arch based. Yeah. So, yeah, this is basically, it's not, I'm sure it's not exactly the same software, but it's basically the same software as the Steam machine. But yeah, in goggles. So yeah, which they didn't really highlight it, but I'm pretty sure this means the Steam machine can also run Android apps. I wouldn't see why not. Like, there's no good reason not to support Android apps over there if you can. But yeah, this is wild. Wait, what the hell? I just got I got an email. I can't talk about it, but that's really weird. Well, I don't know. I probably could talk about that, but I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to say anything until I get to read it all. Anyway. Moving that out of the way. Let's see. It's actually crazy. Now, see, that's well, that's why this was going to be my closing topic. But I'll finish saying a couple more things about the frame, because I feel like most of the stuff that I just said about Steam Machine kind of actually does apply to frame, because it's really neat hardware. And did they give a price? I thought they didn't, but they gave at least a few more hints, which, if I remember, suggested that this was going to sell for, I want to say that the presumptive price was somewhere around like 400. Yeah, no prices today, but they gave some hints to press, which suggested roughly where it would probably come in. Valve never gives prices or release dates. Yeah, that's okay. Look, some companies are going to play it safe. I think in the case of Valve, and it's the same reason I said that like various other companies don't give prices. It's because they want to announce it. Watch what happens in social media. Watch like how people comment on Reddit and what people say here and there. And I think they're just waiting for someone to come out with the analysis. And what I mean by that is someone is going to sit down and write, just for example, hey, here's such and such product. And when we start looking at X product that came out last year and they offer these features and there's this comparison to be made and blah, 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 there's no way that they can price it over blah, blah, blah. Or if they price it anywhere under blah, 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 then it's going to just completely dominate the market and whatever. You know, I think some companies recognize that they can't do that as well as internet sleuths that just have so much more interest in sitting and researching something for hours or days straight. So I think what they end up doing is just saying, you know what? Let's just wait and see what somebody says. My voice is going, or my throat's going so dry. But I think they look to see what somebody says and then determine, all right, we obviously can't price under this amount. We can't price over this amount. How much should we try to get away with? And can we come up with any narrative reasons why we have to pick whatever price that this landed at? What do I think on prices? Okay, so let's see. Now, I know I have it in my history. I was reading the Verge article on this. Let's see. Oh, it's further back in history than that. Damn it. Of course it would be. Let's see. I'm sure I have it. Where is it at? Okay. Okay, so as they pointed out, the previous headset was $1,000. Let's see. They're comparing it to like the MetaQuest 3S, which actually should cost more than this, but runs for $300. Now, I'm going to argue right now, I don't think you can compare across directly, because I think Meta is probably subsidizing to some extent the MetaQuest 3S. Even if it's not literal subsidizing, they're probably declaring they need to hit a certain price point, and they may not be losing any money on it, but I think they're not trying to make as much as they could. Okay, so I'm reluctant to come up with any really hard guess. Like, I certainly would not bank or make any bets on this, but I have a funny feeling that the frame is probably going to come in. I was originally thinking 400. I actually think I'm going to lower that to 350. I think Valve is perfectly comfortable pricing above Meta. I think they just don't want to be losing money on this, and I don't think that they want to make something that is gonna be like too expensive for the market. And seeing as it is less powerful than the Index was, I mean, in certain ways, in other ways this blows the Index out of the water. I think for that reason, it's probably going to end up being a little more expensive, but not a lot more expensive. So that's why I'm kind of going to 350. And it's just such a wild guess. I really don't know. Because 350 also feels too low cost. But then I consider if Meta is able to do what they're doing with theirs, if they can hit a price point of 350, then it really isn't it, or it really shouldn't be that crazy that Valve should be able to hit. Sorry, did I say 350? With the 3S, if they're hitting 300, I feel like Valve should be able to hit 350, though maybe 400. To me, it's going to be one of those two, 350 or 400. I don't think that they try to do a dollar for dollar competition with Meta, because the only way they can do that is straight up subsidizing it. I'm pretty confident there. If that's the situation, like, they have to be willing to lose money to compete with Meta, and I don't see any reason they need to. Honestly, like, the mere fact that you're not Meta is a reason people will buy your product. Avoiding Meta is by itself enough reason to spend more money. Let's see, what else was there? These are super lightweight. They're roughly half the price of, was it their previous headset? Yeah. Or sorry, I said price. I meant weight. They're 440 grams, where the Valve Index was 809. So it's not exactly half, but it's very close to it. Let's see, Hoopy. I could see entry level at 400 on the frame and 600 on the Steam Machine, maybe a bit more on each. I can see it being possible that they go higher on the frame, but I think 400 is the price to hit. 350 if they can do it, but 400 is the, like, if they go over 400, they're going to be losing customers. Not necessarily that they need to worry about that, but I think that's the point where you're now actively trading customers, and you might be passing the inflection point. So what I mean by that is, I don't know, I'm just going to spit out some totally randomized numbers. They don't mean anything. These are not calculated at all. But let's say that at a price of 350, you're gonna sell to, I'm just gonna make up a random number and say 1 million people. At 400, you're not gonna sell as many. You're gonna sell, let's say, 900,000. And the amount of money that you make is really good, and probably better than what you were making selling them at 350 to an extra, like 100,000 people. But then if you were to go up to 450, I think then you see those sales numbers drop from like 900,000. They now fall to 500,000. And the extra amount of money that you're getting does not compensate for how many people you just lost. That's why I think that $400 is probably the inflection point that they can hit with this, while still actually maintaining a healthy enough customer base. Let's see. I like your pitch. I don't know that I see it happening, because, and that's the thing. I've been talking all about the frame. I don't think $600 for Steam Machine happens. And if it does, it's for the cheaper one. It's for the one that has half a terabyte of storage. But even then, I would sooner expect that one is probably going to be $650 or $700, maybe even $750, and then the one with 2 terabytes of storage, I think that one's going to be an extra $150. Call it my hunch. And then the controller, $100? Do you really think that controller's worth $100? I kind of struggle with that one. I mean, it's nice, or seems nice. I haven't held it, but if this doesn't feel premium in every way, like $100 would really feel bad. Like I don't feel like I would feel good about owning this for $100. Not unless I've held it and gone, oh my god, it actually is really amazing. But at the same time, a lot of controllers don't need to be this expensive, or don't need to be $100 expensive. And yeah, I mean, I can see it, like the Xbox and PlayStation Elite controllers, those are like $150. Or maybe one of them is $200. They're really expensive. And they don't really justify it. Will Steam do the same? I don't know. They could. But I just don't know that I could see this going up to 100 and getting people to buy it. Keep in mind the machine cost, that it's in a very real way just a Steam Deck with slightly beefed up chipset and storage instead of screen and battery plus speakers. It's a pretty beefed up processor. They're well, I don't know. I feel like Steam Deck, they were subsidizing. I don't think they do that with Steam Machine. I can't explain why. It's just a feeling. I don't think they're going to do it. In part, or at least some of that comes from the fact that no one is buying a Steam Deck to turn it into a workhorse computer. You would do that with a Steam Machine. With the Steam Deck, you know 99% of the people that buy it are going to leave Steam on there, and they're going to buy games. The Steam Machine, people are going to replace the software on that practically overnight. The Steam Machine, 100%, there will be a lot of people that just buy it and use it as their local machine. Not even as a gaming machine. They'll never even sign into Steam. It'll just be a thing. I think that's a likely outcome. We'll see. And I think that dictates some of the pricing. Okay, so let's see. Oh man, I'm not gonna lie, I'm struggling. My voice is killing me. Or well, my throat is killing me. I keep saying my voice, I mean my throat, but you know what I'm saying. So I'm gonna kind of skip any other thoughts, which, to be fair, I'm not sure how many I remembered in the first place. But yeah, I think that this is cool hardware. I'm really curious about it. I'm interested in it. I really want to try it out. But again, this is one of those where price is going to really determine how well this sells. Let's see. So, final topic to get it out of the way, or not get it out of the way, but Valve is now inviting Android games into Steam. I have been saying for a decade, or around a decade, Google should partner up with Steam so that they can like create a an infrastructure where basically the owner of the Android platform and is sort of the de facto owner of gaming, they should work together because that's in the best interest of Google. Now, I said that also with the contingency and the counterpoint of, if Google doesn't approach them, the very next thing that Steam should be doing is trying to set up their own Android store. And basically my whole point was, if Google's smart, they make the alliance before Steam just comes in and absolutely wrecks them. Because I think that's what happens. Honestly, I think that's what happens here. Because games on Android are kind of a mess. And a big part of that is the same problem that Apple has, where absolute terrible, just the most awful monetization strategies are running rampant on Google Play, especially through games. Valve doesn't have that kind of problem. Not to say those don't exist, they do, but Valve just does not have that same level of problem. And Valve is better at it. They're handling it better. And they're perfectly comfortable telling a developer to just go pound sand because they're not welcome on Steam. I can't help but look at this and think Google finally made enough of mistakes with Steam games, or sorry, with gaming, that Steam can now come in and basically present themselves as, hey, we're doing gaming too, but we're going to do it better. I think that's what's coming. I think this is the scary, like, I never considered the possibility that Epic was going to be able to take on Google when it came to games on Android. Epic is just such a horrible launcher. It feels like it was put together by college students that only worked on it part-time and only like when they were high. That's not the situation that I get from Steam. And I don't know, we'll have to see how it turns out, but I think Steam is probably going to show up and play so much better in this ecosystem. And I'd be shocked if they weren't already setting up for this. Like, at least months ago, probably years. Oh my god. Okay, my throat's, I can feel it. Like, I just took a swig of water and it still felt dry after the water hit. So, yeah. I did a lot of talking earlier this week, and it's killing my throat. So, I think I'm going to kind of just early stop this topic. But I will say, I think that this is really neat, and I'd love to see that there's actually a legitimately competitive platform coming in to do Android games. I want to see what this does. I want to see how this plays out. I think Steam is a genuinely scary competitor to Google. Google should be really, really afraid of this situation because Steam is now in it. And they're not even going very deep into it, but they're in it. And I think that is the sort of situation Google needs to be truly afraid of. But anyway, so may end up just picking up that topic next week and just bring it back and talking more about it. But we shall see. All right. But with that, I'm going to stop here before I absolutely blow out my voice because it's a actual thing I'm a little afraid of. So with that, let's see. I will be I should be gaming this weekend. Saturday, Sunday, evenings, probably Overwatch is most likely. Um, let's see. And we'll be back, of course, next week for another RambleCast. Corbin should be on, barring any unexpected delays or interferences. And hopefully he survives the Fugu challenge. Let's see. And what else? Oh, as usual, of course, if anyone would like to support the channel, there are links down below to Cash App, Streamlabs, and Patreon. Let's see. I will, oh, and yeah, I know I keep saying this, but I will be updating my website soon with more content. But if anyone decides to go shopping, there are affiliate links on there. Or there are a couple of pages that have affiliate links. If you click through those, add something to the cart, I get a commission off of that. And apparently, as far as I understand, it's when you add something to the cart, whoever's affiliate link you last clicked, that's who gets credited. Which I think was still something Honey was doing back when they were part of that, or running that scam. I think Honey was like removing stuff from carts and re-adding them so that they could attach their links. Anyway, I think that about covers it. So I hope everyone has an excellent rest of their week. Thank you all for coming by, being part of the conversation. Y'all are awesome for that. But with that, well, yeah. Hope you have an excellent rest of the week, and I'll catch you in the next one. Good night, everybody.